Welcome back. We will be discussing now Aristotle's treatment of pathos and emotion. And it's pretty interesting. What Aristotle does is go through a variety of different emotions. So remember, pathos it involves putting your audience in the right frame of mind. So the right frame of mind is for the Christian, and we just had this discussion, for the Christian, putting your audience in the right frame of mind would be the appropriate frame of mind. So scripturally, we want to think about that first. Scripturally, what frame of mind, what should our audience feel about a certain thing? So when we think of sin, for example, should we feel Satan? Should we feel sympathetic towards him? Should, pity him? I mean, he's cast out of hell. Cast out of heaven, bound for hell. Hell was created for him. No chance for redemption. Should we feel bad, like God is, Judas Iscariot? Should we think that he's misunderstood, or should there be outrage? Should there be anger towards him? And then towards the lost, should there be indifference? Should there be they get what they deserve? Should there be compassion? Should there be also, though, rejoicing that God is just and that God justly deals with sinners? So all these emotions there. And Aristotle, in his rhetoric, deals with these variety of emotions that he analyzes. He breaks down to analyze the emotion and then how to produce it in your audience. So he has a pretty lengthy discussion of these different emotions. So let's start with Aristotle's definition of emotions. Now, the reason we look at Aristotle still to this day, there's not been a replacement for him. He has written the groundbreaking and really he put together what has stood the test of time, enters the canon of great writing and history regarding rhetoric. He outlined it, detailed it, and every other textbook has worked off of his right there. So we want to understand how Aristotle approached it, and then we'll give some consideration to these different things. Aristotle defined the emotions as all those feelings that so change men as to affect their judgments, and that are also attended by pain or pleasure. Okay? So all those feelings that change men in such a way that it affects your judgment. Okay, so if you feel it, but it doesn't change your mind, all right, you feel it, you feel bad, you're looking at it, kind of like the guys with the cardboard signs standing along the freeway. You see it, and sometimes they have sad things on their signs, and you feel bad, but you don't roll your window down and give them all your money. Perhaps your mind and your reason is saying, yeah, but he looks pretty healthy. He could go get a job. There are a lot of help wanted ads, and it seems like if he's strong enough to stand out there along the road that he could be doing that. Now, some cases you're looking and saying, yeah, they probably can't get a job either, and maybe you would help them. But that is an example of the way an emotion or a feeling might affect you emotionally. It might impact your emotions, but not change your mind or your demeanor towards something. When I was in college, I worked at a pawn shop in the area. In fact, I was working in Griffith, Indiana, at a pawn shop, and my wife was in the shop, and this lady came in with a sad, sad story and crying, and she wanted me to pay a certain amount of money for some jewelry that she had, and it wasn't worth even half of what she wanted for it. And I told her what it was worth. My wife is standing on the other side of the shop, and she's just bawling like my wife, tears streaming down her eyes. And I'm telling this lady that I can't give her that money, and my wife was just like, "Oh, give her the money." All right, so that's another example of emotion, but doesn't change your mind or your demeanor. There are also, these emotions also are attended by pain or pleasure. So it's the combination of those things, that pain or pleasure, that changes your mind, changes your countenance, your demeanor. Sharon Crowley, in her book on rhetoric, Ancient Rhetorics for Contemporary Students, defined emotions or described it this way. Emotions, she said, should not be confused with appetites like pleasure or pain, nor should they be confused with values like justice or goodness. It's more, emotion is what motivates you to seek justice or motivates you to do something that is good or to recognize that something good was done. There. In Book 2, Chapter 1 of Aristotle's Rhetoric, Aristotle explains his purpose for describing the emotions. He says this: since rhetoric exists to affect the giving of decisions, the orator must not only try to make the argument of a speech demonstrative and worthy of belief, he must also make his own character look right, that's the ethos, and put his hearers, who are to decide, into the right frame of mind, that's pathos. The orator must thus know how to present his own emotions and affect his hearers' emotions. So understand that in a piece of discourse, whether written or spoken, there is an emotional exchange taking place. I also have emotion about this. If I'm writing about it, probably I'm passionate about it. Hopefully my passion for this issue comes out in what I'm writing. Same thing when I'm speaking. When I stand and speak or teach or preach or whatever, I'm invested in the topic. I believe in it. I believe in it strongly. And so I am conveying my own emotions. And the hope is, the goal is that you would feel what I feel. It would be pathological. In fact, I think that the term that they use for it is a psychopath. It's psychopathic if I don't feel it at all, but I'm attempting to make you feel it. And if I'm good at making you feel what I don't feel at all, I am a psychopath. I am a sort of sociopath with that. Because it's not honest. It's dishonest for me. It lacks integrity for me to try to draw an emotional response out of you that I don't feel myself. So there needs to be this interaction between emotions. It's not the wooden robotic speaker who is going to move the audience to do anything besides maybe hit the exits. So this is what we're aiming for right here. So with that being said, Aristotle considered emotions in 6 contrasting areas. So 12 emotions total. And the contrasting sets were anger and calmness, friendship and enmity, fear and confidence, shame and kindness. So that's an interesting pair. Pity and indignation, and envy or emulation. For each of these emotions, Aristotle divided his considerations under 3 heads: the state of mind of the people who experience the emotion. So what is their state of mind when they feel that way? Who the people are with whom we feel these emotions, or toward whom we feel these emotions. So who do you feel angry towards? Who do you feel friendship towards or enmity towards? And then, thirdly, on what grounds we feel these emotions. So I'm going to run through and give a brief rundown of each of these emotions. You listen to it. You also get to read about it in your textbook. So the two together, hopefully you can make sense of it. We start with anger, which is paired with calmness. Okay, so you're driving down the road, somebody cuts you off. Do you feel angry? Do you feel calm? Okay, those are contrasts right there. Maybe one of your friends, makes some wisecracks or some sarcastic remark towards you, and maybe you let it slide. Maybe you feel calm. Maybe you laugh it off, or maybe you get angry at them. And sometimes it may depend on the day. So Aristotle defined anger as an impulse accompanied by pain to a conspicuous revenge for a conspicuous slight directed without justification towards what concerns oneself or towards what concerns one's friends. Okay, so there are a number of different important essential elements in anger. It's an impulse. It's not premeditated. It's not a premeditated response. It's an impulse. It's painful. Anger is a painful emotion. And it gives you an impulse to get revenge, conspicuous revenge. So sometimes there's that passive aggressive, I'm going to make you feel this by just saying nice things really snidely to you. That's fine. Do what you're going to do. Go ahead. It won't bother me at all. All right, that kind of thing. When you don't mean it, you mean the opposite, in fact. But conspicuous revenge. When I was in high school, I had a pretty bad temper, and we played 21. Almost every, as Southern Indiana, basketball was what you lived for, and we played 21 pickup every lunch period, and we'd get going in it, and guys would be hacking and fouling, and I would be getting mad, and eventually, and there was in fact a girl in my class who would stand along the sideline, and she would try to predict when I was going to lose my temper, and usually it involved me faking someone up in the air so they're off their feet, and then packing the ball into their face, just because I wanted it to hurt. That's anger, all right? Not saying I was right. Don't emulate that, but that's the way it was. So it's a conspicuous revenge for a conspicuous slight. Okay, so it doesn't have a slight. He goes in and defines slighting. In fact, he defines slighting as the actively entertained opinion of something as obviously of no importance. So it's to treat you with disregard, to dismiss you, just to shuffle you off to the side, to act like you don't matter. All right, that's slight. And a conspicuous slight doesn't have to be in this thing. No one else has to notice. All right, you felt slighted by it. You felt that it was significant enough that you want to get them back for it. Okay, that's why, by the way, people get angry if someone cuts them off, because cutting them off is to treat them like they don't matter on the road. And so that's why road rage becomes a thing with that. So, and it's directed without justification. So if you know that you deserved it, then that's not such a big deal with that. But, it may still hurt, but don't get me wrong on that, but it's not as big a deal. But it's, again, if it was towards you or towards someone that you love dearly, someone you're very loyal to. Aristotle identified, in fact, 3 types of slighting. Okay, so slighting, treating with disregard. You don't matter. Okay, 3 kinds of that. One is contempt, one is spite, and one is insolence. Contempt is felt for what you consider unimportant, and it's just such things that you slight. So you slight it because it's unimportant. It's the person who, you're in the middle of a conversation, they walk up, interrupt you, take over the conversation with the person. The person that you are talking to turns from you and turns to this other more important conversation. That is contempt right there, okay? Spite is thwarting another person's wishes, not to get something yourself, but to prevent his getting it. Okay, so it's the guy who knows that you're interested in a certain girl and that you're thinking about asking her for a date. And so he goes and asks her before you can, just because he doesn't want you to get that girl. He wants to disappoint you in it. That would be spite right there. So it's a person who does it just to spite you. And then insolence is the third kind of slighting. Insolence consists in doing and saying things that cause shame to the victim, not in order that anything may happen to yourself, not because anything has happened to yourself, but simply for the pleasure involved. So in other words, They do things to hurt you or embarrass you or shame you or put you down because it makes them look good. So someone who, you're in a group of people and they start insulting you and teasing you because it gets them more popularity in front of everyone else to pick on you. Right there. Aristotle points out that retaliation is not insolence. Retaliation is vengeance. The cause of the pleasure that's enjoyed by the insolent man is that he thinks himself superior to others when he treats them badly. That's insolence. And Aristotle points out that two particular kind of people tend to be insolent. One is rich men, and the other is young men. Young men in particular become insolent. So, we become angry at slights. When people slight us, we become angry at it. And so then this is the state of mind in which it is felt. That in which any pain is being felt. So if someone slights you and you don't notice, all right? And this happens, by the way, someone less important to you than you. Right? Sometimes you're stuck in a conversation that you don't really want to be in with a person you don't really like to talk to, and someone else comes along and interrupts and draws their attention away, and you are happy about it. Okay, that would not, you would not get angry. All right, that's not, you don't feel slighted by that, you feel rescued by that. Okay, so it's anger if you feel pain. If you don't feel pain, it's not anger. People with, and Aristotle taught this, that people with unsatisfied desires are prone to anger and easily roused, especially against those who slight their present distress. Okay, so this is another thing. This is why if you bang your head and then somebody starts laughing, you might get angry and throw a book at them or something like that, because you are in pain and they are slighting that pain. Now, we have a joke in our family that when one of us gets hurt, you can tell how much it hurt by how much my wife laughs at it. If you're bleeding and dying, just howling on the ground, rolling on the floor. And then the people towards whom anger is felt. Anger is felt always targeted, aimed at a particular individual. So there's always a target of your anger. Road rage, you're angry at a particular driver, a particular car. All the other cars around you might be scurrying and weaving in and out of traffic and so on, but that one guy made you mad, and so you're aimed at him. The persons with whom we get angry are those who laugh, mock, or jeer at us, or those who inflict injuries upon us that are marks of insolence, or those who show contempt for us in connection with things which we care about. Okay? So, I'm sure you recognize the tendency towards anger. Calmness is the opposite of anger. Calmness is a settling down or quieting of anger, and we feel anger. The frame of mind that makes people calm, not angry. The state of mind that makes people calm is the opposite of anger. When we enjoy freedom from pain, inoffensive pleasure, justifiable hope. Also, when time has passed and no vengeance, when time has passed or when we've gotten our revenge, we feel calm. And I think most of us recognize that just the passing of time. If you're on the road, somebody cut you off, you get mad at it, it's best if you wait a little bit. Don't react, don't respond. Now, of course, if he then slams on his brake in front of you and then, flips you off or something like that, then you're, calm. Get off the road, get away from him, change lanes, get away wherever you can if possible. That kind of thing can lead to calmness. But if you've gotten revenge and if you feel like you got revenge, that also helps to calm you. Now, Aristotle adds that we feel calm when we are amusing ourselves or laughing or feasting, when we're feeling prosperous or successful or satisfied, when we're enjoying freedom from pain or inoffensive pleasure or justifiable hope, when time has passed and our anger is no longer fresh, because time puts an end to anger, and vengeance taken on one person puts an end to even greater anger felt against another. So sometimes there might be 3 targets of your anger, but you got revenge on the one and you don't need to get it on the other. You're calm now. All right? Also, he said, if we've convicted the offender, if the offender has already suffered worse things than they in their anger would have themselves inflicted when I would have inflicted upon him, if they feel that they themselves are in the wrong and are suffering justly, because anger is not excited by what is just. So if we think we deserved it, we don't get angry at it. And if we think that the offender will not see that he's punished by our account and because of the way he's treated us. Okay, so who do we feel calmness towards it? We feel calm towards those who do not slight us, who treat us respectfully with dignity, or who seem to do so involuntarily. So they slight us, but it just seems like they didn't notice, you know. And sometimes some personalities get an excuse because you're looking at them thinking, yeah, they're not thinking about what they're doing. Also, those who admit their fault and are sorry or are otherwise humble before us. If they apologize, oh, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead and finish. Then you're less inclined to be angered by that. Okay, friendship is the next emotion. Friendship, Aristotle said, is wishing for a friend what you believe to be good things, not for your own sake, but for his, and being inclined, so far as you can, to bring these things about. So friendship is seeking the good of someone else, okay? And doing it not so that you can praise yourself or promote yourself. Sometimes people are like the, Good Samaritan, the kind of Good Samaritan that has a, hold on everyone, pay close attention, I'm about to do something really nice for the down and outer over here. All right, that's not friendship. And when people believe that you are treating them like they're a charity case, they are not going to feel friendship towards you. They may feel resentment towards you instead. Aristotle defines a friend as one who feels thus and excites these feelings in return. So somebody who does nice things for you and just does it because they like you, that we feel friendly towards people who are like that. And by the way, as a young person studying in college, it's probably good for you to think about what friendship involves. It really involves giving yourself to another person because you like that person. Now, a lot of times we are friendly towards people who we wish liked us. And that is seeking something in return. So it's not pure friendship there. So when do we feel, what is our state of mind when we feel friendship? We feel friendly when someone has been kind to us, unasked, and does not proclaim the fact when they're done. And that's the key. They're not bragging about it, boasting about it to others, or using it as evidence of what fine fellows they really are. They're not being nice to you as a resume builder. Okay? They're being nice to you because they genuinely care about you. You will return that kindness to them, or you ought to. Who do we feel it towards? Your friend is the sort of man who shares your pleasure in what is good and your pain in what is unpleasant. So when you hurt, he hurts. And when you rejoice, he rejoices. That's friendship, which, by the way, is supposed to characterize the New Testament church. And they do it for your sake and no other reason. They're not doing it to get credit for themselves. Also, those who share your view of good and evil. Those who treat you well and those you wish would treat you well. Those who are friends to you are friends and enemies with our enemies. Those who are friendly or unfriendly to the same people as we are. That's why sometimes, and it shouldn't happen, but sometimes people will say, well, if you're their friend, you can't be my friend. Hopefully that was reserved for second grade on the playground, but sometimes it continues into adulthood and beyond. It should not be the case. Enmity is the opposite of friendship. Enmity is synonymous with hatred. Okay, now there are important differences between hatred and anger. Listen carefully to the differences. What is our state of mind? What do we feel hatred towards? Hatred wishes to do harm to the hated and wishes him to cease to exist. Okay? That's hatred, pure and simple. Otherwise, it's anger. Hatred is not accompanied by pain, and it lasts over time. Hatred is a demeanor towards another person, in other words. Anger is a flash, an impulse, in a moment, okay? And it sometimes goes as quickly as it comes. Hatred is more a determined enmity against that person. Who do we feel hatred towards, enmity towards? We hate those who anger or spite us. So there's a relationship with anger, okay? I would say that it's someone who angers us and then continues to sneer, like doesn't care that they anger us, and in fact, intentionally provokes us to anger even more. People we disapprove of also become our enemies, where we just say, you know what, I'm done with them. That's hatred or enmity. Hatred can be felt towards individuals or classes. That's another important distinction to anger. Anger is always directed at an individual. Hatred may be, enmity. I say it that way. I know hate is not a family value, right? But when it comes to politics, our sworn enemies are the left. Now, that doesn't mean that when I meet a Democrat that I hate him, all right? Because it's directed more at his cause, at his party, at his policies, but perhaps not at him. My next door neighbor may be a Democrat and vote rabidly Democratic, and I may have a good relationship with him. I ought to try to maintain one, while at the same time being an enemy to his cause. So that's enmity. Okay, the next set is fear and confidence. So fear is a pain or disturbance due to a mental picture of some destructive or painful evil in the future. Okay, so important features of that definition of fear. First of all, it's a pain. Okay, it's a painful emotion. It's emotion that causes you pain. No doubt you've been afraid of something in your past, so you know that's an emotional thing. And the more you fear it, the more emotional it is. I remember in high school wrestling days, when we had wrestling matches, I was a little nervous normally about practice, but when we had a match, and match days were much easier than practice days, but the fear was so much more intense. And prior to the match, I would sometimes get the chills, like my body temperature would drop and my teeth would rattle prior to going out on the mat. There's an intensity to it in that battle. And that's the idea there of fear. A pain or disturbance due to, and this is the other key here, a mental picture of some destructive or painful evil in the future. Okay, so the next thing is that you have to be able to picture it. You picture this dire thing happening to you, okay? And then the third thing is that fear, generally speaking, fear is in the imagination. So fear is what you imagine is going to happen to you. So that's why it's in the future. It's not in the present. If it's happening to us in the moment, we don't fear it. It might hurt. It might be painful. Somebody's thrashing us. They've got us down on the ground and they're punching our face. You're not feeling fear. You might be feeling a lot of pain right at that moment, but you're not feeling fear because it's happening. Fear is, and that's why fear can be such a crippler to us, because it's all wrapped up in the future. And so it's imagination. It's what we imagine happening. That's fear. Okay, so fear is felt by those who believe some destructive or painful thing to be likely to happen to them. So what you think is unlikely to happen to you, for example, the fear of falling off a tall building, okay? If you think about a very tall building and standing on top of it, the reason why your legs might get a little queasy when you're standing on top of a tall building and you're looking down is because it could happen then. But probably when you're not, most of your life, you're not thinking about falling off tall buildings. You're just not. Because it's not the same thing. It's not highly likely that an airplane will fall out of the sky and crash into you. Personally, that the chances of that are, I think you have better chances winning the lottery than having that happen to you. So you don't live in fear that an airplane is going to crash into you. Talk about an angel. You probably don't live in a lot of fear of angels either, because you don't have a belief that an angel is going to appear to you at any particular time or any particular moment. So you don't fear that. You might, though, fear rejection from your friends. You might fear failure in life. You might fear that someday you'll be pushing a shopping cart and sleeping underneath an overpass. You might look at people and fear. You might see a hugely, grossly overweight person and be afraid that you might end up like that someday as well. Those kinds of things that are more likely to happen, that we fear rejection from friends, fear that, the girl that you're interested in will be interested in someone else or reject you. Those kinds of things are very real to us right there. So we fear what we believe some destructive or painful thing to be likely to happen to us at the hands of particular persons in a particular form and at a particular time. People fear when they feel that they are in danger. We fear also, and this is who we feel fear towards. We fear those who have the power of destroying us. That's why if the pastor or the principal asks you to come and meet with him, there's an element of fear there, because you know that they have that power. If you've ever stood before a judge, especially when I was college age, I have a lead foot and I like to speed, and so I got pulled over more than a few times. I had to go stand before a judge more than a few times, and I've never stood before a judge where I did not feel an element of fear, because I know that he has power to do something that could cause me great pain. That's who we feel it towards. We also fear those who have destroyed people stronger than us. That's why fear is a powerful force for controlling people. This is what every tyrant knows, every dictator knows. If somebody rises up against you, China, if you know about the Tiananmen Square massacre, you know that it sends a clear message. Opposition will be met with violent force. And so then the response to that is to be much more cautious, much more careful, much more judicious in things. So the same thing. That's why, and it's wrong, but sometimes pastors will use anger, and not just pastors, parents sometimes use anger to control their children because it works. That's why they use it. And children